Rania, welcome to the C-Suite of the Open program. It's so great to have you join us.
Thank you, Tanya, for having me. I'm delighted to be here today.
I can't think of a more deserving individual to be interviewing on International Women's Day. You have literally shattered the glass ceiling by being appointed as the only female leader of a major chartered Canadian bank. I know along the way there had to have been challenges. Perhaps you can tell our audience a little bit about some of the key challenges that you faced and some of the ways that you persevered through those.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm absolutely honored and humbled to be here today. Lots of challenges along the way. Being an immigrant, for example, coming to this country, not having a name that most people can pronounce. Serving coffee with a degree from St. Mary's University, majoring in finance and marketing, because I couldn't get an interview to actually start working somewhere else. So that would be one of the key challenges. And then growing up in an organization where, you've been told you're too aggressive, too assertive. So all the cultural differences that people take for granted. I don't have an accent. I could look like I could come from any background, but yet not being raised here and having just these cultural differences and not understanding why you're perceived one way, which is not really core to your brand. So I would say these are some of the challenges. And then other challenges that women tend to have in general throughout their career. So being told I'm looking for a man and looking for someone that's older to work for me in that position. And so, you know what, there's lots of challenges, but lots of opportunities for us to overcome.
Yeah, cheers to that. One other question that I think a lot of our viewers would have is what kind of advice you would give women who are seeking out that C-suite role. And as we've talked about, it's not very attainable at the chartered bank level, but we're making some progress. But what advice would you have specifically for those people keen to move up the corporate ladder?
Yeah, so what I would say is early on in your career, I think it's really important to have some self-awareness in terms of the environment that best suits you as an individual. So I always believe that cultural fit is absolutely critical. So what's the right environment that you can bring your whole self to work? And so early on in my career, it was a little unfortunate, but it wasn't the right cultural fit, and which allowed me to then, I left Halifax at the time and moved to Toronto and ended up going into the corporate world, corporate banking. And I felt at home. I felt like I could be myself. And all of a sudden, I started performing and outperforming my colleagues. And so early on, I think cultural fit is really, really important, but it only happens if you're self-aware. And then as you move up in the organization and you move into leadership roles, then you can actually set the tone from the top. And so I would say that's definitely one important piece of advice. The other thing too is growing up, to be honest, I was a very shy child, Tanya. Nobody ever believes it, even in university. And what I realized is if you don't find your voice, no one will actually hear you. And so, if you're invited to meetings, if you have a seat at the table, you have a voice at the table. So I think that would be my second piece of advice. And my third piece of advice is take risks. Because until we and not little risks, take big risks. That's the only way we're actually going to continue to break that glass ceiling. Is I've always kind of taken, the most challenging opportunities that a lot of my colleagues thought, why are you doing that? But to me, it's when you take something that's challenging, then you have an opportunity to really prove yourself and shine. So I would say, get out of your comfort zone and take some big risks in your career.
Such incredible advice. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. As we recognize and celebrate International Women's Day today, in fact, but throughout the month of March, a lot of organizations are placing an emphasis on making change. UN Women has actually put some focus on the discrepancies between really the impact of the pandemic, the global pandemic, for men and women in the workforce. And we're seeing a disproportionate effect on women leaving the workforce. I think we've heard about she sessions, we've heard about the challenges. I know you manage a lot of employees at Laurentian. Can you talk to us a little bit about the ways that you're navigating through this global pandemic, and maybe specifically some of the things that you're doing for your employees and maybe even specifically female employees?
Yeah, so what I would say is that, I joined Laurentian Bank just 4 months ago. And so the theme that is choose to challenge. And I would say that Laurentian has really, chosen to challenge by leading the way. So it was the first bank in 1997 where we actually appointed the first female board of director chair, right? And then in 2020, I was honored to be the first female CEO of a Canadian bank. And so I would say that we've been leading the way. But what I'm most excited about is we've started this Courageous Conversation series in the organization. And I think as an umbrella, is having, courageous conversations about lots of topics, whether it's, Black History Month, or it's about diversity, or it's about, being a parent, and so I think using an umbrella where we're inviting our employees and our leaders to get out of their comfort zones, because until you actually have these open conversations, it's really hard to walk in someone else's shoes and truly understand what it means to be different. So I would say the Courageous Conversation series is something I'm really proud of. The other thing too is setting targets at all of our leadership scorecards. And so diversity targets, retention targets, and targets for BIPOC communities as well. And then including those targets in our financial package that we review with the board on a quarterly basis. So I'm a big believer what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. And so if the numbers are important from a profitability perspective, if we're really serious about equality, diversity, inclusion, we need to start setting those targets and holding our leaders accountable to that. So I would say those are a couple of things. 54% of the workforce at Laurentian are women, and over, the directors and above, so they're our executive leadership team, over 40% of them are women. And I'm hoping that we're going to continue to close that gap and have full equality as well.
Fantastic. I'm so encouraged by some of the suggestions that you've made, and I hope that our brief chat inspires some of our viewers, some of those being leaders, and then also maybe those seeking to move up the corporate ladder and make change in their own organization. So thank you so much, Rania, for being with us, and we hope to see you again at C-Suite at the Open.
That's great. Thank you very much for having me today, Tanya, and happy International Women's Day.